It was, by all accounts, a morning so dull that even the pigeons seemed to hesitate before taking flight. A thin mist lingered along the platforms of Flaxborough Station, dimming the brass edges of the upline sign and giving the whole place an air of suspended expectation, as though the next train, if it came at all, might be carrying news of the armistice rather than a dozen office clerks. Station master Weatherby had just finished his second mug of railway tea, which was less a beverage and more a suggestion of liquid with a vague acquaintance with tannin, when the discovery was made. It was the porter, young Bates, who brought it in, pinched between forefinger and thumb like something slightly indecent. Found it on platform 3, sir.
Nearest the bench by the goods shed. Weatherby took it. A glove, Bates, not a grenade. Lace, too.
Woman's, obviously, Bates grinned. So I reckoned. Bit fancy for Flaxborough, eh? The glove was pale ivory, finely stitched, faintly scented with something floral that made the station master's nose twitch.
Its mate was nowhere to be seen. Well, he said finally, either some lady's dropped it or there's been
an occurrence. It was not that Weatherby expected an occurrence, but in the mild tedium of railway life, such words carried a certain thrill, like the whistle of an unexpected express through a sleepy siding. Within 10 minutes, Mrs. Healy in the station buffet had heard about the glove. Within 20, she'd told Mrs. Drabble from the newspaper stall that it was definitely not local. By the half-hour mark, the glove had acquired both an owner, that Mrs. Frobisher, from the piano lessons, and a purpose, some kind of secret meeting, you know. Meanwhile, Inspector Purbright was just settling into his office, spooning sugar with the slow precision of a man who had long learned that haste rarely improved the outcome of anything, least of all human behavior. Sergeant Love, whose enthusiasm often outran his evidence, appeared in the doorway. "There's been a find at the station, sir." Purbright looked up mildly. "A find, Love?" "A glove, sir. Lace. The station master thinks it might be connected to something improper." "Has he defined improper?" "Not exactly, sir. But he looked rather pleased about it." Purbright's mouth twitched. The nearest he came to a smile. "Very well. Let's go deprive Mr. Weatherby of his excitement." Flaxborough Station, when approached by the police, always seemed to feel a kind of civic importance it didn't quite deserve. Weatherby stood at attention by his office door, as if expecting the CID to arrive by helicopter. "Morning, Inspector. Thought I'd better report it straight away. Never know, do you?" Purbright examined the glove on Weatherby's blotter. "You're quite right to do so."
People have been known to vanish for less. Vanished?
Weatherby brightened. "You don't think—" "I think," said Purbright, "that someone will be wanting this back. Whether they'll wish to say so publicly is another matter." Bates lingered nearby, pretending to polish a timetable case.
"I saw a lady on that bench, sir, around 8 o'clock.
Greycoat, small bag.
Couldn't see her face. Misty, you know. Did she seem distressed?"
"No, sir. Just sitting, like she was waiting for someone who never came." Purbright nodded slightly. "And no train due then?" "Next one wasn't till 8:43. "Ah." He turned the glove over once more, noting the faint crease of wear and a small tear along the wrist seam. "Mended delicately by hand. Well, Mr. Weatherby," he said, rising, "let us not alarm the populace. I'll take this along, have it kept safe. Perhaps its owner will appear before the week is out." Weatherby looked faintly disappointed.
"You don't think it's evidence, Inspector?"
"Everything in Flaxborough, Mr. Weatherby, is evidence if one has the leisure to interpret it." By lunchtime, the glove had achieved a life of its own. Mrs. Healy was telling the postmistress it had been found near a body. It hadn't. The postmistress told the vicar's wife it was a sign of moral collapse. It wasn't. And the vicar's wife, not to be outdone, confided to Mrs. Frobisher that it might be hers, poor dear, since she does wear lace, and one must be careful these days when, later that afternoon, Mrs. Frobisher opened her piano lid and found the missing mate safely tucked beside the metronome. She smiled faintly as though the universe had made a small but pointed joke at her expense. By the following morning, the lace glove had outgrown all proportion to its size. What began as a misplaced accessory had developed through the mercurial art of conversation into a full-scale moral allegory. The town, which could rarely agree on the price of kippers, was united in certainty that something improper had taken place on Platform 3. Only the details differed, those being, of course, the parts most eagerly embellished. At the Women's Institute tea that afternoon, Mrs. Peveril began by announcing that she had heard the glove was of French make. This, naturally, lent it an air of wickedness.
No Englishwoman, she declared me, would wear lace quite so.
Insinuating, Mrs. Gedge countered that it was probably bought in Nottingham, where they make that sort of thing by the mile, but the hint of scandal had already taken root. Elsewhere, the gossip assumed less geographic and more theological form. The vicar's wife confided to Miss Copley from the drapers that the glove belonged to a person of worldly habits, a phrase which, in Flaxborough, could mean anything from attending dances to eating oysters out of season. Inspector Purbright, meanwhile, had not been idle. He had, with the slow discretion that was his professional hallmark, sent Sergeant Love to make quiet inquiries at the station. Love's idea of quiet was relative. By mid-morning, half the railway staff had been interrogated with the gravity of an espionage case. When he returned to the station office, Love's expression carried both pride and confusion. "Spoke to everyone, sir. Nobody knows who the glove belongs to, but they all have theories." Purbright looked mildly pleased. "Theories can be useful, Love, if only to discover who wishes them believed." Love frowned.
You think someone's lying, sir?
"Oh, I expect several are. Most people do eventually, especially when they're telling the truth." He placed the glove, now sealed in a paper envelope, on his desk as if it were a polite visitor awaiting conversation. "Still," he said, "it has served its purpose. The town is talking, and when people talk, they reveal what they didn't intend." That evening, Purbright called upon Mrs. Healy in the station buffet. The place was nearly empty, save for a solitary man reading a newspaper and a smell of warm pastry attempting to disguise its industrial origins. Mrs. Healy, a formidable widow of indeterminate age and unlimited opinion, wiped her hands on her apron and regarded the inspector with cautious delight.
"I knew you'd be round, sir."
"I said to Mrs. Drabble only this morning, mark my words, Inspector Purbright won't rest till he's found whose morals that glove belonged to." "Morals?" said Purbright mildly.
"You mean owner?" Mrs. Healy considered this.
"Much the same thing, isn't it?" He smiled faintly. "You saw no one unusual on the morning in question?" "Only the usual, which is quite unusual enough. The porter says a lady in grey was waiting, but I never saw her. I did see Mr. Talkley from the council, though, loitering near the bookstall. Pretended to be looking at magazines, but the only one he took was Home and Garden, and he can't tell a dahlia from a duster." "Mr. Talkley," Purbright repeated. "And what time was that?"
8:30, maybe a bit before.
"He left just before the 8:43. Purbright thanked her, accepted a cup of tea strong enough to qualify as evidence, and returned to the police station through a fine drizzle that turned the cobblestones a respectful grey. By the time he reached his office, the day's paper lay on his desk. The Flaxborough Chronicle had already given the matter its due prominence. Mystery on Platform 3. Article of female apparel found, police investigating. The editor,
A man who believed that truth spoiled a good story,
had added a hopeful line, romantic motive not ruled out. Purbright folded the paper with quiet amusement. The Chronicle, he reflected, was both his greatest hindrance and his most efficient deputy. It spread gossip faster than influenza, and often with more lasting symptoms. The following morning brought a small, precise development. A note, typed on cheap paper, unsigned, arrived at the station desk. It read, "If you wish to know about the lady in grey, ask who she was waiting for." Not who she was. It was unsigned but smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and perfume. Purbright read it twice, then handed it to Love. You see, Love, someone thinks they know something, or wants us to think they do. Sounds like a riddle, sir. Indeed, Flaxborough is full of those, though most involve the question of why people marry whom they do. He tucked the note away, leaned back, and regarded the ceiling as if expecting wisdom to seep through the plaster. Let's pay Mr. Talkley a visit. A man who pretends to read Home and Garden is bound to be concealing something, if only a dislike of roses. And with that, the quiet machinery of inquiry began to turn, slowly, soundlessly, but with the kind of inevitability that only Inspector Purbright could manage, while the rest of Flaxborough hummed contentedly with speculation and Mr. Talkley's office on the second floor of the town hall possessed a melancholy grandeur that seemed to reproach its occupant for being unequal to it. The furniture was heavy oak, the carpet a faded red that gave the impression of blushing from long exposure to civic embarrassment. Councillor Talkley himself, large and pink-faced, rose when Inspector Purbright and Sergeant Love were shown in, his expression that of a man unfairly mistaken for the culprit of his own self-importance. "Ah, Inspector," he said, with a sort of magnanimous politeness. "This will be about that, unfortunate business at the station?" Purbright inclined his head. "Matter of minor curiosity, Councillor. You were seen at the station the morning the glove was found." "Indeed I was."
Pure coincidence.
"I had intended to catch the 8:43 to Thursby for a committee meeting."
Unfortunately, it was cancelled and I, decided to remain in town." Purbright smiled mildly.
"Cancelled?"
"Odd. The timetable shows it ran as usual," Talkley coloured.
"Or perhaps I misremember."
"I may have changed my mind."
One's morning decisions are sometimes fluid. Love wrote this down with the enthusiasm of a man who suspects he's just heard something useful, though he had no idea what. Purbright's tone remained pleasant.
"I understand you were seen examining magazines." The councillor gave a short laugh. Yes. Terrible habit. Helps me pass the time. Home and Garden, was it?"
"My wife rather likes the illustrations." "Your wife has excellent taste," said Purbright blandly. "Did you notice a lady on the platform?" Talkley hesitated, then shrugged. "Only in passing. A grey coat, I think, sitting alone. Nothing remarkable. Waiting for someone?"
"I couldn't say." He gave a brisk smile that closed the subject rather too firmly.
"Is all this quite necessary, Inspector?"
"I hardly think I'm the, lace-wearing type." Purbright rose, polite as ever.
"Not at all, Councillor. You've been most helpful. I trust you'll let me know if you remember anything else." As they left the office, Love looked puzzled. "You think he's hiding something, sir?" Purbright paused on the stairs.
"Almost certainly."
"The question, Love, is whether it's relevant to our glove or merely to his career." They stepped out into the weak sunlight, the square echoing with the sound of a distant bell from St. Chad's. Purbright's pace slowed. "Let's call at the station again. I fancy Mr. Weatherby may have embroidered his account since last we met." The station master greeted them with the satisfaction of a man whose minor celebrity had not yet faded.
"Good of you to come, Inspector."
"The press was sniffing about this morning."
"I sent them off sharpish." "Splendid," said Purbright.
"We wouldn't want anyone to mistake this for a major crime. The county might demand action." Weatherby laughed obligingly, then produced a small envelope from his desk. "Found this under the ticket counter this morning, sir."
"Might be connected."
"Bit of a coincidence, if not." Inside lay a torn railway ticket stub. "Flaxborough to Thursby, single," marked 8:43 a.m., stamped the same day the glove was discovered. Purbright turned it between his fingers. "You're certain it wasn't there before?" "Quite sure. I cleaned that counter myself yesterday afternoon. Meticulous I am." Love, whose concept of meticulousness extended only to his hair parting, looked impressed.
"Any idea who bought it?"
"Couldn't say. Might have been the lady in grey, or her friend." Purbright's eyebrows moved slightly. "Friend?" "Well, sir," Weatherby said, leaning confidentially forward, Mrs. Healy says she saw a man walking along the edge of platform 3 just before 8. Bowler hat, umbrella, smart type.
Not local? Did she mention that before? Not to me.
Said she wasn't sure it was worth troubling you with. But now, of course— Yes, said Purbright softly. Now, of course. He thanked Weatherby and stepped out onto the platform, pausing by the bench where the glove had been found. The mist of that morning had lifted, but something about the place seemed to retain its hush, the peculiar stillness of a small secret not yet confessed. A faint scraping sound drew his attention. The porter, Bates, was oiling a trolley nearby. "Morning again, sir," Bates called cheerfully.
Back on the case?
"Only stretching my legs," said Purbright. "Tell me, Bates, you mentioned seeing a lady that morning. Did she meet anyone?" Bates thought. "Can't say for sure."
Might have.
"I went round back to fetch some parcels. When I came out, she'd gone, and the 8:43 hadn't arrived." "No, sir."
Late that one was.
"Always is." Purbright looked down the track, where the rails curved toward a vanishing point that promised only routine. "Did you notice if she carried anything?" "Just a handbag, small one."
And oh yes, an envelope, white.
"She was reading it." "Reading?"
Opened it, looked inside, then put it away when I came past.
"Funny thing, she looked sort of upset, but trying not to show it." "People in stations," said Purbright, "often look like that. It's a place designed for departures, not happiness." Back at the police station, Love was waiting with a freshly brewed pot of tea and an expression suggesting deduction. "So she had a ticket to Thursby, sir."
Do you think she went?
Purbright poured his tea carefully. "If she did, Love, she left one glove behind, and if she didn't, someone else may have had her ticket." Love frowned.
But who'd do that?
Purbright smiled faintly. "Ah, Love, never underestimate the English appetite for appearing respectable while behaving otherwise." He sipped, thoughtful, then set down the cup. "We'll find out more about Our Lady in Grey soon enough. But before that, I'd like to speak with Mrs. Healy again, preferably before she edits her memory any further." Outside, the afternoon light softened over Flaxborough, and a faint wind stirred the faded station flags. Somewhere beyond the rooftops a train whistled, long and distant, the sort of sound that suggested both arrival and regret in equal measure. Purbright listened, his face unreadable, as though he already suspected that the sound might one day mark more than just a timetable. Miss Frobisher's piano studio occupied the upper floor of a house on Church Row, directly above a stationer's that smelled perpetually of ink and disappointment. From the pavement one could hear her pupil's progress in scales, halting, uneven, and, to a passer-by, faintly reminiscent of distress signals. It was here, amid framed certificates and a withered aspidistra, that Inspector Purbright called one mild afternoon, politely removing his hat as he entered. Miss Frobisher herself was a woman of about 50, tall, upright, and composed in the manner of those who have long ago made a truce with solitude. Her hair was steel grey, coiled neatly at the back, and her dress, though plain, carried a dignity that made frivolity seem unnecessary. "Inspector Purbright," she said, rising from her chair beside the metronome.
How very civic of you.
"I was told one of my gloves had entered public life." Purbright smiled faintly. "A brief but vigorous career, Miss Frobisher."
I fear it caused quite a stir among the more imaginative. She gestured for him to sit.
"Flaxborough thrives on imagination, Inspector. It's our only natural resource." "Quite so." He glanced toward the piano, where a lace glove, twin to the one in the police envelope, rested with the unconscious poise of something recently vindicated. "You've heard about the discovery, then?" Miss Healy saw fit to inform me. She also implied I had left it behind in a moment of romantic confusion. I assured her that romance and railway platforms have been strangers to me for some decades. Purbright nodded with gentle amusement. "And yet your glove's double was found precisely where such fancies begin." "Indeed." She tilted her head. "And you wish to know how it came there?" "Only if you're inclined to tell me." She folded her hands. I mislaid that glove several days before the morning in question, on the 8:43 to Thursby, I believe.
I was visiting a pupil's mother.
When I returned, it was gone. I'd assumed it lost to some upholstery crevice. Purbright considered this. So if your glove was found later on platform 3, someone must have taken it from the train and left it there? Or dropped it, perhaps?
I cannot imagine anyone wishing to plant it. No?
His tone was mild, but his gaze, when she met it, was not without depth. Miss Frobisher's smile thinned slightly. Inspector, if you suspect me of being entangled in a mystery involving lace gloves and strangers on platforms, you flatter me more than you intend. Purbright inclined his head. I suspect only that people, when unobserved, are occasionally more interesting than they appear. Tell me, did you notice anyone on that train who might have taken a liking to your property, or to you? She gave a short laugh, surprisingly soft. No one who would risk public embarrassment for it. There was a gentleman, yes, reading the Times rather intently, but he neither looked nor spoke to me.
Men of that variety seldom, Purbright rose.
You've been very helpful, Miss Frobisher, and you've restored at least one article of property, which is more than most mysteries achieve. She stood too, her gaze direct. May I ask, Inspector, whether you think the glove's appearance on platform 3 was accident or intention? I think, he said after a moment, that it was an act both careless and deliberate, the sort people commit without quite realizing which it is. As he took his leave, the faint strains of a child's hesitant piano scales followed him down the stairs. They seemed to echo the rhythm of thought itself, tentative, faltering, and full of small corrections. Outside, Love was waiting by the car, notebook in hand. "Well, sir?" "She's as innocent as a hymn," said Purbright. "But one must remember that even hymns can conceal the occasional dissonance." Love blinked. "You think she's lying?" "I think she's telling the truth, as she prefers it remembered." They drove back through the narrow streets where shopkeepers swept their doorways with more industry than effect. The town had the self-satisfied calm of a place confident that nothing of consequence ever happened within it. Purbright knew better. In towns like Flaxborough, consequence was simply disguised as custom. When they returned to the station, a telegram awaited him. It was from Thursby, no record passenger, named Frobisher, on 8:40. Train date stated. Purbright read it twice, folded it carefully, and placed it in his pocket. "Curious," he murmured. "Either the railway has misplaced a lady, or the lady has misplaced the truth." Love leaned forward. "But she said she was on that train." "Indeed, which makes one wonder who she saw fit to be seen by. As evening gathered, Purbright walked alone along platform 3, where the faint smell of coal lingered and the lamps hummed with their usual indifference. He paused beside the bench, staring at the worn slats where the glove had rested. The wind brought a rustle from the signal box, a whisper that might have been nothing, or might have been someone closing a door too softly. Purbright did not turn. He simply straightened, adjusted his coat, and regarded the empty platform with that patient, unfathomable expression that seemed to hold the town's secrets in temporary trust. Somewhere behind him, the telegraph clicked once, sharp and precise, like a punctuation mark in an unfinished sentence. He allowed himself a small nod, as though acknowledging a message not yet fully received. Then, with the unhurried gait of a man who already suspected the next move of the game, Inspector Purbright left the platform, leaving the quiet to settle back over Flaxborough as the lamps flickered and the last train of the day sighed into the distance. The following morning, Flaxborough station seemed unusually animated for so modest a place. The mist had lifted, leaving the cobblestones slick but sparkling, and a faint chill carried the scent of coal and wet leaves. Inspector Purbright and Sergeant Love arrived promptly, for they had received a curious note via the station office. Parcel unclaimed. Pigeon found. Investigate both. The parcel in question was a modest brown paper packet tied with string resting inconspicuously on the cloakroom counter. It bore no name, only a note. For collection. 2 p.m. The station staff insisted it had been there since early morning. Weatherby claimed to have kept it under careful observation, as if it might spontaneously reveal its contents through sheer willpower. Purbright examined it, noting the neatness of the fold and the faintly musty smell of paper that had been handled with cautious fingers. "It seems innocent enough," he said, "yet someone clearly wished us to notice it." Love frowned. "A gift, sir? Or a threat?" "Could be either, or neither." Purbright inclined his head toward the platform. "Bates, any unusual arrivals this morning?" The young porter shook his head. "Just the usual, sir. Though, a pigeon turned up, dead, behind the bench on platform 3. Strange thing, feathers slightly singed, didn't see a match to any of the others around." Purbright's eyebrows lifted ever so slightly. "Feathers singed?" "Yes, sir. Looks like it brushed something hot." He bent to examine the bird, noting a faint scorch along one wing and a streak of dirt from the gravel. There was no blood, no apparent struggle. It lay quietly, as though exhausted from some private adventure. "Curious," Purbright murmured. "A pigeon, a glove, and a parcel, all converging at the same platform. Coincidence, or carefully arranged?" Bates shrugged. "I wouldn't know, sir. Pigeons aren't usually part of mysteries." Purbright straightened, thoughtful. "Perhaps not, Bates, but even pigeons can bear messages in ways humans ignore." He picked up the parcel again and felt its weight. Slight, but firm. He untied the string carefully, noting the faintest hint of a smell: parchment, ink, and something floral. Inside lay a folded letter and a small, ornate card. The letter bore neat handwriting, almost exacting in its precision. "Meet me on platform 3 at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Do not bring anyone else. The glove will be the signal." Purbright's lips twitched in that quiet half-smile he reserved for puzzles in mid-assembly. "It seems Our Lady in Grey may not be as unobserved as she believes." Love glanced at the card. "Sir, it's embossed. Fleur-de-lis. Expensive. Not local." "No," Purbright agreed. "And not casual either. Someone has made a point of propriety, yet also secrecy. A contradiction, which is always interesting." He returned the letter carefully to the parcel and sealed it again. "We shall see who comes for it tomorrow, but before that, we have the matter of our pigeon." They approached the bench, and Purbright inspected the bird more closely. One small detail, easily overlooked, caught his eye. A tiny scrap of paper caught in its feathers, nearly transparent, stamped with a partial seal. He removed it gently and unfolded it, revealing a fragment of an address. Incomplete, yet unmistakably familiar. "Interesting," he said quietly. "Someone intended a message, but it never reached its destination. Pigeons, unlike people, rarely forget. But they can be intercepted." Bates looked puzzled. "Do you mean someone stopped it, sir?" "Possibly. Or perhaps it simply found the wrong hands first." Purbright tucked the scrap into his notebook. Either way, it provides a small but distinct thread to follow. As he stood, he surveyed the platform with that patient, calculating gaze that had earned him both respect and mild fear in equal measure. The wind shifted, lifting stray papers and dust motes, and in that silent dance he imagined the invisible movements of a dozen people, each with their own motives and mistakes. Love whispered, "Sir, it seems complicated. Gloves, parcels, pigeons. How does it all fit together?" Purbright's eyes remained on the empty tracks. "Love, rarely does it fit neatly, but these trivial oddities, misplaced objects, minor accidents, often reveal more than the grand gestures of the culpable. Patience, an observation, and the right question at the right time will tell us everything. The morning passed quietly, yet the air hummed with expectation. The parcel remained untouched, the bench bereft of human presence, and the pigeon's small message lingered in the notebook. Somewhere beyond the station, a train whistled faintly, as if hinting at arrivals yet to occur and secrets still in motion. Purbright, with deliberate slowness, returned to the office, plotting the next stage of his inquiry, while Flaxborough carried on around him, unaware of how precisely its routine had been infiltrated by mystery. By the time the sun began its descent, the station seemed normal again. Yet Purbright knew that beneath the familiar veneer of schedules and ticket stubs, the first threads of a more intricate story were already beginning to intertwine. By mid-morning, Flaxborough seemed to hum with a peculiar energy. Word of the glove, the parcel, and even the pigeon had travelled farther than any train could manage, carried along the gossip lines of tea rooms, church pews, and shop counters. Yet, for all the fervour, a deeper thread eluded notice: the man behind the adverts in the Flaxborough Chronicle. Mr. Talkley, pompous counsellor and keen amateur historian, ran the classified column, ostensibly to raise funds for the local museum, though his sense of timing often betrayed a private agenda. Inspector Purbright approached Talkley's flat above the Chronicle office with his customary patience, tapping lightly on the door before entering. Talkley, dressed in his habitual tweed and waistcoat, rose from a pile of manuscripts with the air of a man unaccustomed to visitors who might actually know something. "Inspector Purbright, how delightful! To what do I owe this unexpected scrutiny?" "Merely curiosity, Mr. Talkley, and a hope you might clarify some of your recent advertisements." Talkley's brows lifted. "My advertisements? Oh, those are simple announcements, items for sale, notices of lectures, hardly secrets worth troubling you over." Purbright allowed a faint smile. "Perhaps. Yet your timing coincides rather precisely with certain unexplained occurrences at the station." "Coincidence?" Talkley declared, a little too quickly. "Purely coincidence. I would never mix business with, shall we say, local entertainment." "I trust not." Purbright's tone was bland, almost conversational, yet possessed the quiet weight of inevitability. "Yet it is curious that one advert in particular, parcel for collection, platform 3, 8 a.m., discreet handling, requested, appeared without attribution, and vanished the same morning as the glove was found." Talkley flushed slightly. "Ah, that! I assure you, Inspector, I only approved the wording. The copy came from someone else. My role is administrative." "Indeed," said Purbright, noting the slight tremor in Talkley's left hand. "And the same copy included a reference to an unusual delivery, I believe. Something of interest to a particular lady?" "Administrative, I tell you," Talkley repeated, though less convincingly. "I merely ensure that the Chronicle maintains proper decorum." "Curious phrasing," Purbright remarked. "For a man arranging for notices to reach precisely the people one wishes them to reach." Talkley stiffened.
"Inspector, you are suggesting—"
Purbright's smile remained polite and impersonal. "Only that attention to detail, especially where minor messages are concerned, sometimes reveals more than the sender intends." At that moment, Love shifted his weight. "Sir, I notice the local historian has been remarkably attentive to these notices. Could someone be using him for information, or is he using them for himself?" "That," said Purbright softly, "is the very question we shall explore." He moved to the window and looked out across the rooftops, noting the subtle geometry of chimneys and the distant train whistling along the edge of town. Small towns are excellent at hiding both intent and observation.
"One merely has to know where to look." Talkley coughed, suddenly aware that silence might be heavier than any accusation. I assure you, Inspector, nothing improper has occurred.
I am simply a custodian of the town's records. Custodians often know more than they realize, Purbright observed. Even of trivial objects, even of pigeons, gloves, and unclaimed parcels. The councillor's lips tightened, but he said nothing further. Purbright, noting this, returned his attention to the envelope on the desk, the one containing the mysterious letter instructing its collection at Platform 3. He allowed himself a small reflection that the simplest communications often pass through too many hands and emerge altered, like the echo of a bell along cobbled streets. By the time they left Torkley's flat, Purbright had observed enough to suggest that the councillor's involvement was more than incidental, yet less than criminal. A man who meddled in notices precise and discreet could as easily be manipulating appearances as information. The difference, he knew, was in the intent. Subtle, almost invisible, and often easily mistaken for propriety. Outside, the streets of Flaxborough were brightening under a timid sun. Shopkeepers swept doorways, children skipped along pavements, and the postman delivered letters without apparent concern for the station or the mysteries it now hosted. Purbright walked slowly, hands clasped behind his back, considering how Mr. Torkley's small manoeuvres might intersect with the larger pattern of events. The glove, the pigeon, the parcel, and the invisible hand of human curiosity that had now begun to guide them all. "Love," he said at last. Keep a discreet eye on Torkley. There is nothing overt yet, but the pattern of interest is unmistakable. Sometimes the smallest movements reveal the most. "Yes, sir," Love replied. "Notebook ready. Shall we return to the station?" "Yes," Purbright said, glancing once more at the square below. There is still more to observe, and in Flaxborough, observation often counts for more than evidence. By the time they reached Platform 3, a breeze stirred the edge of the parcel on the cloakroom counter, as though eager to reveal its secrets. Purbright paused, noting the precision of its placement and the faint dust of the day settling around it. He allowed a slight, almost imperceptible nod, a signal that the threads were beginning to converge, if only slowly, as they always did in the careful hands of a patient investigator. That evening, Flaxborough Station assumed a quiet, almost expectant air. The lamps cast a pale amber glow along the cobbles, and the faint whistle of a distant train hinted at journeys yet to begin or end. Inspector Purbright and Sergeant Love returned to the platform, drawn by reports of a new development. A gentleman, well-dressed and apparently uninjured, had collapsed near the bench where the glove had been found, clutching an umbrella and muttering about a shove. The man was seated upright now, supported by Bates and Weatherby, who looked simultaneously concerned and proud to be part of something so momentous. He wore a dark overcoat and a bowler hat slightly askew, and his umbrella, hooked over his arm,
Bore a faint smear of lace along the handle. Inspector Purbright.
"Sir," Weatherby said, "he claims someone pushed him. I don't know if you want to speak to him." Purbright nodded slowly, approaching the gentleman with his customary politeness. "Good evening, sir. Might I inquire what brought you to the ground?" The man blinked, as if surprised to be addressed with civility amid his apparent misfortune.
I was walking along the platform.
"Someone came up behind me, shoved me slightly. I'm afraid I lost balance." His voice was precise, though tinged with anxiety. "You noticed anyone near?" Purbright asked. The gentleman shook his head.
No, only a shadow.
Perhaps a porter. Perhaps the evening mist? Purbright glanced at the umbrella handle, and the faint lace caught within its curve. "You carry this umbrella often?" "Yes, always. My late aunt gave it to me."
It is of some sentimental value. And the lace?
He looked down, following Purbright's gesture. "I do not know how it came there."
It was not mine. Love, who had been quietly observing, whispered, "Sir, it's identical to Miss Frobisher's glove." Purbright nodded.
"Yes, that is what makes it significant. Someone either intended to leave it as a signal, or it was transferred inadvertently." He turned back to the gentleman. "Did you see any letters or packages today?" Anything unusual in your possession?
No, nothing, the man replied.
I only carry the umbrella and my small notebook. Then we have a curious situation, said Purbright mildly. A gentleman pushed, a glove found, and a parcel awaiting collection. Nothing violent, yet all slightly askew. It suggests careful planning or deliberate coincidence, Weatherby added with some pride. There was a note left at the cloakroom, sir.
It instructed someone to come at 8 a.m. tomorrow and mention the glove. Purbright's lips twitched.
Indeed, which implies Our Lady in Grey, or someone acting for her, is not wholly unaware of observers. This gentleman may have encountered her or merely become involved through circumstance. The man shifted uneasily.
I assure you, Inspector, I do not know this lady. Purbright inclined his head, patient.
Of course. Yet it seems your path has intersected with hers, and with her belongings. It is often the way of minor mysteries. Ordinary people, inconveniently involved, bound together by accident and discretion. Love whispered, Sir, do you think he was pushed intentionally? Purbright studied the man, noting the tautness of his jaw, the careful adjustment of his coat, and the way he avoided certain glances. It is possible. Or it is possible that the platform itself, uneven and shadowed, served as a convenient instrument of coincidence. Either way, we shall observe tomorrow at the appointed hour. That will tell us much. As they prepared to leave, Purbright lingered a moment by the bench, surveying the empty platform. The lamps flickered slightly and a thin wind lifted dust motes from the rails. He made a mental note of the gentleman's posture, the way his fingers lingered on the umbrella, and the subtle tension in his gait. Small gestures, often overlooked, spoke volumes. Take care, sir, he said finally to the man, and do not attempt to collect the parcel yourself before the appointed time. It is best observed from a distance. The gentleman nodded, uncertain but compliant, and Purbright turned to Love. Prepare a watch for the morning. The threads are beginning to converge. Tomorrow someone will act according to expectation, or make a mistake. Outside, the night had deepened, yet the station seemed alive with invisible anticipation. Trains whistled faintly in the distance, pigeons flitted from rooftops unseen, and the quiet collision of people, objects, and intention settled over Platform 3 like a stage awaiting its actors. Purbright stepped back into the shadow of the lamp, adjusting his coat, and allowed himself the smallest nod of satisfaction. The next stage of the investigation was imminent, and he would be ready. The following morning, Inspector Purbright sat in his station office, the chair pulled close to the desk, hands folded over a notebook that contained every curious detail of the glove, the parcel, and the gentleman with the umbrella. The office was quiet, the faint ticking of the wall clock the only sound apart from the occasional shuffle of Bates, delivering messages, or Love pacing in mild impatience. Purbright leaned back slightly, eyes on the ceiling, considering the human habits that so often complicated even the simplest of cases. Flaxborough was a town that valued appearances above all else, yet beneath its placid exterior, private motives thrived with the subtlety of ivy on stone. He noted how a dropped glove could prompt a moral scandal, how a brown parcel could signal intrigue, and how a dead pigeon could become a clue to unseen transactions. It was, he reflected, the careful weaving of human expectation and small errors that created a mystery worth solving. Love cleared his throat. So we've arranged a watch on Platform 3 for 8 o'clock. The parcel remains untouched. The glove is still where it was found. Excellent, Purbright replied. Observation, Love, often reveals far more than inquiry alone. People cannot help but betray themselves, even with their politest gestures. He leaned forward, examining the envelope that contained the letter instructing the meeting. Its edges were neat, precise, almost obsessive in their exactness, yet the handwriting revealed the personality behind it, meticulous, nervous, and deliberate. Someone had taken pains to ensure both discretion and visibility. The balance was delicate, and it spoke volumes about the sender. The lady in grey, Purbright mused, or someone acting for her, wishes to be seen yet not caught. That is a familiar tactic in Flaxborough, where the ordinary eye is often less reliable than the whisper behind a teacup. Love frowned. "Do you think she'll actually turn up, sir?" "I think she will," Purbright said, "though not for reasons we might immediately recognize. People rarely do anything without intent, but intent can be disguised by circumstance, politeness, or fear." He paused, considering the gentleman with the umbrella. The lace caught on his handle could not have been accidental, yet the man's innocence was plausible too. A perfect example of Flaxborough's subtle contradictions, ordinary behaviour concealing threads of significance. Even Weatherby, for all his fussiness, might have inadvertently assisted in misdirection. Love consulted his notebook. "So the counsellor, Mr. Talkley, he seems anxious. Do you think he has a connection beyond the advertisements?"
"Perhaps," Purbright said.
"He is the sort to meddle without taking risks, to observe rather than act, and yet, through observation, he can affect outcomes."
"Watch him quietly."
"His next movement may be entirely revealing, though he imagines it innocuous." The inspector rose, walking slowly to the window. Beyond, platform 3 lay almost empty, save for the occasional railway worker and a stray pigeon fluttering among the benches. The parcel rested under the cloakroom counter, silent and inert, yet charged with expectation. The morning air carried a faint scent of coal, paper and wet earth, ordinary things that, in the hands of careful observation, could conceal extraordinary information. He returned to his desk and opened the notebook. He wrote brief notes on timing, positioning, and likely motivations, while allowing himself the latitude to consider human nature. Flaxborough's residents, for all their civility, were adept at layering small deceits beneath customary politeness. A dropped glove could be a mere accident or a signal, a misdelivered parcel, a message or a ruse, a chance encounter, coincidence or orchestration. Love watched him thoughtfully.
"Sir, it's almost like the town itself is conspiring." Purbright allowed a faint smile.
"In a manner of speaking, Love, it is. Towns have memory. They store slights, grudges, and secret pleasures like treasure chests. One merely has to know how to open them." He sipped a cup of tea, considering the threads he had already traced. Miss Frobisher, the gentleman with the umbrella, the mysterious lady in grey, the parcel, the pigeon, and the meticulous counsellor. Each was connected by circumstance, observation, and subtle interaction. Yet the pattern remained incomplete, requiring patience and restraint. "Observation first, action later," Purbright said softly. "The right question at the right moment will reveal everything. And until that moment arrives, we watch and we wait. There is no need for haste. Flaxborough will provide the answer when it is ready to do so." As the morning light shifted, falling pale across the platform and the station office, Purbright allowed himself a small reflection. That in a town like Flaxborough, the most inconsequential events, an abandoned glove, a misplaced parcel, a faintly injured pigeon, could illuminate character and intent more clearly than any confession or confrontation. Love, scribbling diligently, looked up.
"Sir, it's almost too quiet."
"Nothing seems to be happening." "Precisely," Purbright said, returning his gaze to the empty platform. "Quiet is often the harbinger of revelation. In the stillness, the guilty, or the observant, reveal themselves without words." The station clock ticked steadily, the trains hummed in the distance, and Purbright, with hands clasped behind his back, allowed himself the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the first signs of resolution were always invisible until the right moment. By mid-morning, the station buffet was busier than usual, though still modestly so. Mrs. Healy bustled behind the counter, wiping crumbs from the table and rearranging teacups with an efficiency born of long experience. Inspector Purbright entered, accompanied by Sergeant Love, and was greeted with a nod of recognition and a faint smile. "Inspector, what a pleasant surprise," she said, placing a steaming pot of tea on the counter.
"I was just telling the girl that some excitement wouldn't go amiss." "Excitement indeed," Purbright replied, taking a seat on the edge of a chair.
I wanted to consult you regarding the lady in grey, and perhaps about the parcel as well. Mrs. Healy's hands paused in mid-air.
Oh, I'm sure I know nothing, sir.
But I am quite ready to make tea while pretending. He allowed a small smile. I trust you are being truthful, as always. Yet sometimes the most mundane observations prove useful. She poured tea into his cup, holding the pot carefully. The parcel, you say? Still sitting there, like a naughty child waiting for attention. Some of the boys have peaked, but it is far too respectable to be mischievous, I think. Indeed, Purbright said, lifting the cup in acknowledgement. And did you notice anyone behaving differently this morning? Mrs. Healy considered this. Well, Mr. Bates kept glancing toward the platform, and the gentleman with the umbrella he returned briefly, looking about as though he might be expecting someone.
He did not see me, thank goodness. Purbright inclined his head.
Did he collect the parcel? No, sir.
Only lingered,
And muttered to himself.
Strange behaviour, if you ask me.
Very polite, though, which can be the most dangerous kind. Precisely. Purbright's gaze was gentle, but discerning. You mentioned glances. Did anyone else watch for arrivals? Mrs. Healy shook her head. Just the usual. People passing through, some pretending to read timetables, some just dawdling. Though I did notice Mr. Talkley pausing at the edge of the platform. Very upright, very conspicuous. Was he alone? Yes, looking carefully but as if afraid of discovery. It's quite amusing how conspicuous fear can be. Purbright sipped his tea, considering the angles. We may be seeing a subtle interplay of motives. The parcel is a signal, the glove a marker, and Mr. Talkley perhaps an observer or orchestrator. You did well to note him. Mrs. Healy smiled faintly.
I do what I can, sir.
And I suppose one never knows who is watching whom. Flaxborough is full of secrets disguised as civility. Quite so, Purbright murmured. I wish to ask a favour. If you could subtly engage any curious patrons in conversation without arousing suspicion, we might learn more about their intentions. She inclined her head, her eyes sharp. Of course, Inspector. Tea and small talk can reveal more than interrogation sometimes. People talk freely when they think they are ignored. Exactly.
Observation is often the key.
And your position here allows perfect concealment of interest. Love scribbled notes, noting the meticulous attention Purbright paid to gestures, inflections, and timing.
So do you think someone will come for the parcel soon?
Purbright looked toward the cloakroom counter, where the brown paper parcel remained innocuously in place. Yes, but they will act according to expectation, not necessarily according to plan. That is what will reveal their character. We need only wait and watch. The morning passed in gentle rhythm. Mrs. Healy served customers with brisk efficiency. Bates adjusted chairs and polished counters, and Purbright observed with quiet patience, noting the smallest gestures. The lady in grey had not appeared, but the pattern of behaviour, the preparation, and the anticipation were themselves informative. Finally Purbright rose. Mrs. Healy, thank you for your assistance. Please continue as usual, but observe carefully. Any unexpected attention to the parcel or unusual glances toward the platform may prove significant. She inclined her head. I shall, sir, and a cup of tea will always be ready if you need it. As they left the buffet, Love whispered, Sir, do you think we've drawn out the guilty party? Not yet, Love, Purbright replied, his eyes scanning the empty platform and the still parcel. But we have prepared the ground. The next movement will be theirs, and the pattern will become clear. Outside, the morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of coal smoke and wet leaves. Purbright paused briefly, allowing himself to absorb the stillness of the station, the slight flutter of pigeons, and the quiet anticipation of unseen arrivals. In Flaxborough, as always, revelation came subtly, and only to those who observed with patience, discretion, and care. The following morning dawned crisp and bright over Flaxborough Station, the mist of previous days giving way to clear light that allowed every detail to be scrutinized. Inspector Purbright arrived early, accompanied, as always, by Sergeant Love, and immediately turned his attention to the brown paper parcel that had become the focal point of so much quiet intrigue. It sat untouched on the cloakroom counter, its string neat and taut, as if deliberately resisting curiosity. Purbright examined it with his habitual patience, noting the faint impressions along its edges, the small crease that suggested it had been handled more than once, and the subtle scent of floral perfume that lingered faintly despite the hours. He tapped it lightly with a finger. "Someone expected this to be observed," he murmured.
And observed it has been. Love leaned close.
"Shall we open it, sir?" "Not yet, love," Purbright replied. "We must wait for the proper moment. Observation often tells us more than action." They positioned themselves unobtrusively in the corner of the station buffet, which allowed a clear view of both the parcel and the platform. Mrs. Healy bustled about, serving tea to a sparse morning crowd, unaware that she was facilitating an experiment in human behavior. At precisely 8 o'clock, a figure appeared on the platform. The lady in grey, elegant yet unobtrusive, paused near the bench, glancing around with the studied attention of someone accustomed to being seen but not identified. She carried a small handbag, and her posture was perfect, careful, deliberate, and subtly tense. Purbright noted the gentleman with the umbrella nearby, lingering as if coincidentally, though the precise timing suggested otherwise. His gaze swept the platform in measured intervals, and every so often he adjusted the umbrella handle, brushing against the faint trace of lace from the earlier encounter. Purbright sipped his tea quietly, allowing the scene to unfold while love jotted every movement. The lady approached the parcel and hesitated, her gloved hands hovering over it. She glanced toward the clock, then around the platform, and finally bent to lift the package. At that moment, Torkley appeared at the far end, his posture deliberate, his expression neutral, but the alertness in his eyes betrayed the careful orchestration he had maintained in previous days. Purbright rose and approached slowly. "Good morning," he said, politely interrupting the tableau. The lady in grey startled slightly, the parcel held loosely between her hands. "Inspector Purbright," she said, with the faintest trace of relief. I thought no one would be here." "I thought it best to observe rather than presume," Purbright replied. "The parcel is now collected."
I imagine you know its contents.
She nodded.
A letter and a token. I intended it for the gentleman over there, she said, gesturing subtly toward the man with the umbrella. Ah, said Purbright, so the glove, the pigeon, and the parcel all converge as intended.
Yet unintended observers have noted the choreography. She looked puzzled.
Observers?
The purpose of the parcel, Purbright explained calmly, was a message and a signal. The glove identified the sender. The timing, the pigeon, even the gentleman's presence all served to ensure discretion while conveying intent. "And the gentleman?" she asked, indicating the man, who now approached with cautious civility. Purbright gestured. "He's neither culprit nor victim.
Only recipient."
The misinterpretations, the whispers, the astonishments were a consequence of human curiosity. The town's enthusiasm for mystery exceeded the simplicity of your intentions. Torkley, who had been observing from a respectful distance, now stepped forward, adjusting his coat. "Inspector, I merely assisted by maintaining the notices. I had no direct involvement beyond ensuring the instructions reached the correct eyes." "Exactly," Purbright said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Each of you acted according to civility, discretion, and local custom. Yet in so doing you created a ripple of intrigue across Flaxborough. And the glove, the parcel, the pigeon, all trivial, yet all sufficient to draw observation." He paused, allowing the quiet to settle, then gestured lightly toward the bench. The clues, minor though they were, each had significance. Lace indicated ownership. The parcel signalled a meeting. The pigeon, though unintended, revealed interception. Even Torkley's advertisements contributed to the sequence. All elements observed, noted, and preserved allowed the pattern to emerge clearly without disruption. The lady in grey lowered the parcel, a faint flush on her cheeks. "I did not intend for so much fuss," she said. "Intent," Purbright replied, "is always overshadowed by perception. And in Flaxborough, perception is often the stronger force. Your purpose has been achieved, yet the town has learned a lesson in observation, patience, and propriety." He stepped back, surveying the platform with calm satisfaction. Each participant, each minor gesture, had contributed to the solution. Nothing had been forced. Nothing had been overlooked. The mystery, carefully constructed and observed, now resolved itself quietly in the morning light, leaving only the faint stir of air over cobbled stones and the hum of the station continuing its daily rhythm. By midday, Flaxborough had resumed its gentle rhythm. The station platform emptied of the drama that had occupied it for the preceding days. The lady in grey had departed quietly with the gentleman. The parcel returned to a private hand, and even Torkley had slunk back to his office, satisfied that his discreet participation had gone unnoticed by all but the most patient observer. Inspector Purbright lingered in the station office, the quiet punctuated only by the soft ticking of the clock and the occasional shuffle of paperwork. Sergeant Love sat nearby, pen poised, notebook full of the small, precise details that had guided the investigation. For once the usual gossip and conjecture were irrelevant. The truth, calm and civil, had emerged without need for spectacle or disturbance. "Sir," Love said, "it all seems
Rather trivial.
a glove, a parcel, a pigeon, and the usual Flaxborough civility. It hardly seems worthy of such attention." Purbright allowed a faint smile. "Love, it is precisely because it is trivial that it matters. Trivialities often reveal character more accurately than confession. People in small towns behave according to pattern and propriety. Deviations are rare but telling. The town's gossip, though amusing, was merely the surface of a carefully concealed choreography." He moved to the platform window, looking down at the empty tracks. The rails gleamed in the afternoon sun, ordinary yet capable of carrying so many stories. He recalled the movements of the lady in grey, the gentleman with the umbrella, the parcel, and even Torkley's subtle interventions. Each had acted with discretion, politeness, and intention, yet each had left traces, small behavioural clues that only careful observation could assemble into coherent narrative. "The glove," Purbright continued, "was the signal, the parcel, the message, the pigeon, the inadvertent messenger. Each piece, observed, noted, and interpreted, allowed the pattern to reveal itself naturally. Nothing forced, nothing hasty. The solution lay in patience, subtlety, and the study of ordinary human behaviour." Love nodded slowly as though absorbing a lesson both practical and philosophical.
"And the town?"
"Unaware largely," Purbright replied. "They believe a minor curiosity was resolved by chance or coincidence.
And in a sense it was.
But chance is merely the name we give to human actions unobserved and unexplained. Flaxborough has learned nothing formally, yet its daily rhythm carries the memory of careful scrutiny. People may notice small peculiarities, but they will not question them. That, too, is order." He turned to his desk, sorting the small notes, the slips of paper, and the envelope that had contained the instructions. Each item returned to its folder, carefully preserved, as though acknowledging the completion of a minor yet precise narrative. Purbright allowed himself a quiet reflection on the human habit of appearances, the desire to seem proper, the effort to conceal error, the fascination with minutiae. In a town like Flaxborough, these were the forces that determine not only civility but revelation. "Love," he said at last, "make a note that all participants acted according to character, discretion, and intention. There is no malice, no harm, and no further pursuit required. The mystery is resolved not by drama or force, but by observation and understanding." Outside, the whistle of a departing train echoed along the platform. Passengers moved with the ordinary purpose of those who had little knowledge of the drama that had quietly unfolded around them. The sunlight reflected off the rails and the brass of the station signage, and a faint breeze stirred the benches where a lace glove had briefly rested. A pigeon had carried a message, and a parcel had been collected in civility. Purbright allowed himself a final glance, a slight adjustment of coat and tie, and returned to his paperwork. The rhythm of reports, forms, and daily administration resumed as it always did, punctuated only by the quiet satisfaction of an orderly resolution achieved through patience, discretion, and the meticulous study of human behavior. Outside, Flaxborough continued to hum its gentle, unobservant song, unaware that a small but precise mystery had concluded, leaving behind only the faintest traces of observation, civility, and propriety. The trains ran on schedule. The pigeons flitted above, the parcel and the glove were accounted for, and the quiet satisfaction of a well-managed investigation settled over the station like an invisible cloak. In Flaxborough, order had been restored, as it always was, without fanfare, without scandal, and without the need for further intervention. Inspector Purbright returned to his desk, pen in hand, the faintest smile crossing his lips. He would file the notes, complete the report, and the town would carry on, untouched in appearance, but subtly informed by the truth of what had occurred. And in this quiet, ordinary conclusion lay the true measure of his work, clarity achieved without spectacle, and understanding reached without force.